say about me. Walk in the room, they throwing shade left to right. They be like, ooh, she's serving. I am Rasheem of the Counter Narrative,
a musical weapons program.
and I was just jamming, as you can see. You know, I jam a little bit, listening to my Janelle Monáe. Anyway, this is Rasheem, the host of the Counter Narrative, and tonight's segment is on Black women in corporate America. I am joined by my very good friends, one of them being Kiana Rodriguez, who's going to come on in a little bit. She is the CEO and founder of Happy Work Week. And I'm also going to be joined by another good friend of mine, Shelby Lane, in the building. So we're going to be having a lot of conversations around of course, Black women in corporate America. And some of those things that we're going to hit on are going to be around an article that I found in Fortune magazine based on a report that they generated. And we're really going to be talking about some of their findings. How does that show up in other people's experience? I want to hear from people in the audience. If you're not here live, I definitely want to hear from you in the replay. And I am going to start bringing people on and let them share a little bit more. But before I do that, let me give you a little background for framing the context of this conversation of Black women in corporate America. So there was a report by the Center for Talent Innovation, and that is a nonprofit, and it promotes diversity and it examines issues of Black women in corporate America. So what they did is they took a number of interviews. They also did a number of questionnaires, and they released a report of their findings telling about some of the challenges that Black women have in corporate America. So I'm just going to bullet point right now those challenges, and we're going to take a deeper dive and talk about those and see if some of those come up for you, different ways of navigating that space when you have ebony skin and you're in white spaces. What does that look like? What does that mean? So one of the things that the report found was that Black women's contributions go unrecognized. We're going to talk about that for a bit. We're also going to talk about one of the challenges that they said is that Black women lack sponsorship. We're going to talk about what that means, what that looks like. How do you get sponsorship within corporate America as a Black woman? We're also going to talk about the fact that one of the things that their report reported was that Black women are more likely to kind of put their heads down. So we're going to discuss all of these things. Black women are more likely than their white female peers to aspire to be a leader. So if they're more likely to aspire to be a leader, we're going to talk about some of the reasons that this report says and some of the reasons that we've experienced of why that may not be happening. And even though we're talking about Black women in corporate America, we're also going to acknowledge the fact that Black women are not a monolithic group. We do have other things that make up our identity, whether it's class, gender, education, regional location, religion. All of these different things contribute to our identity. So we're going to talk about some overarching themes, as well as we're going to talk about those other aspects of our identity that may not line up. I'm going to talk about it. Kiana Rodriguez is going to talk about it. Shelby Lane is going to share her experiences. And Stephanie, I hope I could get her on as well to share some of her experiences about being a Black woman in corporate America and what that looks like. So let me see some of the other things on the article. Also, I'm going to go ahead and share the article in the chat. So if you are in here in the chat, I'm going to share the link so that you can see what article I'm looking at. It also has a link within the article to the report. If you're watching this later on YouTube, don't worry. What I'll do is I'll make sure that I copy paste the link to this particular article that we'll be discussing. Excuse me. I will post it under the actual video that of what we're talking about. So Joel, did I say Joel right? Did I say that right? Is it Joel or Joel? Hi, Joel. I'm going to say that until you tell me how to pronounce it differently. Hey, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. Shelby, I so appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Kiana Rodriguez, who is, again, the founder and CEO of Happy Work Week. She is a coach that helps people to have a happy work week. And it's so relevant to this topic of being a Black woman in corporate America. We recently did an episode on Diary of a Happy Black Woman. And we know what that narrative tends to be about Black women, so we had that conversation, and it was really, really fun. Lots of fun. So Kiana, hey girl.
What's going on? Oh wait, we gotta do it. We gotta.
Girl, don't make me get no.
Yes.
A little bit. So you want to say hello to everybody, Kiana?
Welcome, everyone. Hello. Good evening. I hope you guys had a wonderful Saturday. All right. And it has been an amazing day. So I'm just hoping that you had an amazing day also. So welcome. I'm so glad you guys are here.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I'm trying to get Shelby to come on. And again, we are looking at
wait. See, I log out of my Facebook like often. Like I don't even go. Like if you send me a message through Messenger, I'm there, right? And so I can speak to you that way. So I completely missed your birthday. Happy birthday!
Thank you. Happy birthday. I do the Beyonce. Do a little bit of that and a little bit of the Black Girl Snake. So, Steph, let me know if you end up wanting to come on Quirk Place. Also, let me know if you end up wanting to come on. So how we're just going to do this is those things that I highlighted at the beginning, I am just going to, me and Kiana are just going to go back and forth on them. And I need to share the link with you guys in the chat so you can know which article we're looking at. So again, the information that we're looking at is coming from a report that was created by the Center for Talent Innovation. It's a nonprofit that promotes diversity and examines issues facing Black women in corporate America. And we're just going to go one by one and kind of look at some of these, some of the issues. So let me say one of the first ones that came up on this thing for me was one of the issues of Black women's contributions going unrecognized in corporate America. And it said the report notes that 26% of Black women feel their talents aren't recognized by their superiors compared to 17% of white women. One of the things that also came up in that is like a person shared their experience where they're in a meeting, they'll say an idea, like we should do A. And then people just keep on talking like they ain't hear nothing. And then somebody else says, we should do A. Mm-hmm. And then after that, they're like, oh, that's a great idea. And it's like, wait a minute. That's one of the things that came up. So if you are, Kiana, tell me your experience with that. Shelby, tell me what Shelby, you started nodding your head real early. So tell me.
Please, Shelby, please.
Well, I've worked in healthcare for many years, and as everybody knows, healthcare has become more corporate every day. Mm-hmm. And not only does that stem from like just being a Black woman, but even just being a Black woman with and being younger than the rest of the people in the room. So I've been in meetings with pharmacists and other people who have all these alphabet soup behind their names. And here I am sitting there new to the table. And I've brought up an idea. One of the ideas was, we're not getting authorized for prescriptions. And, let's form a formulator group together so that we can have people who are experts in their field. And that's all they do is make sure authorization goes through for the physicians that we serve, right? And everyone's just like, well, I don't know who we get to get on that group. And then blonde hair, blue-eyed young pharmacist comes along and says the same exact thing in the next meeting to talk about the issue. And next thing you know, we're formulating a plan to make it happen. And not knowing how to make that happen, she blew it. And then here I had to go in, and now the assignment is up for me to clean up the mess. And so I think I viewed my part in corporate America as the cleanup girl. I can't get credit for the idea. I can't get credit for the plan. But once someone else has messed it up, then now I'm under the pressure and under the gun to clean it up and make it right. Though there's no consequences for the person that's made the error. But if I don't clean it up in a certain amount of time or make it right, then there's consequences for me. So that's what I felt. That's my experience. I've always been the cleanup girl, always been the one that had the idea, but nobody listened to. But once that person screwed it up, then I was allowed the option of fixing it and making it right.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Kiana, have you had any experience with that, or what do you think about that point?
I think that, honestly, especially after reading this article, I think it's industry based. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I was in the military, and after I still worked for the military, even though I was a contractor. And then after that, I worked in education. And so, and even after that, when I came here to Charlotte, it was the banking industry. Okay. And so my experience is not necessarily just Black women, it's just women in general. More on the military side, if you understand how the structure is, I think that the military, they do their best into recognizing soldiers. But I think that what I've noticed between the banking and what I've done in the military is, if you have the skills and it's more on the technical side, I don't care if you're male or female, we need you. And they will recognize that. And they will tap into those skill sets, and they will listen to what you had to say. I was the only one that did my job in that whole office. And so when in my experience, they had to rely on my skill set and my talent, and it was more technical. So they had to listen because there was no one else there to do that job. So I think that I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just personally think that it is industry based. In Charlotte, the healthcare industry is wide, and it is so corporate. And I hear so many complaints. I hear like nurses and I mean, it's just chaotic. And even when it comes, I just hear so many things when it comes to the healthcare industry. So I honestly think that, in my opinion, that it is industry based when it comes to recognition, because there's always politics involved. That even in the military, I spoke about that, the politics involved, where people were receiving, like I trained somebody. I talked about this on the Periscope. I trained someone and they received medals and honors instead of me, so I'm like, look, how do you think they learned how to do all that? That came from me. And so, but then I had to realize, that it's really not about that, but that's something separate. But she was a Black woman. She was a Black woman. She got recognized off of something that I trained her how to do.
So I want to, before I jump to something, I want to say more about, why were you the only one so that was a situation where they had to rely on you or rely on what you said because they weren't doing their job. But why were you the only person in the office doing your job? Okay, so I was actually when I was in the military, and I was the only one on base that did this job. I passed security clearances for the entire base. And so they had to come there in order to get their top secret clearance, in order to go through the whole process to get read into the program, right? And everyone that had a clearance on the base, I made sure that they
went, they had all the paperwork. They did their what was it? It was 86 something. I can't even remember, but that was my job. And so I really didn't, they relied on me to do it. When I got out of the military, I worked as a contractor and I did information assurance. And so I made sure that that all the engineers that I work with were in compliant with DoD regulations, DIA regulations, and that they didn't step over any boundaries. And so everyone else, I worked with so many people that were doing technical jobs, but that was my responsibility.
Oh, okay. So you weren't saying that no one else was doing their job. You're just saying for your role, you were the only one who had that role.
Right.
Okay. All right, Steph, what has been your experience with that point in the article where it says Black women experiences going unrecognized? I mean, their contributions going unrecognized.
Okay, so just to give a little background about me, so I can frame my opinion. I worked in corporate finance, and I've worked for some major corporations. I worked in the headquarters of Frito-Lay, PepsiCo. I worked at JCPenney's headquarters, Dr. Pepper. I worked for Nordstrom in their buying office. I worked for Shell. I've worked for some other oil and gas companies. So I kind of been in quite a few different types of industries, a lot of retail, and then most recently I've been in insurance and financial products. So, and I worked for the largest insurer in the world, AIG, at one point. So I've seen different corporations of different sizes, different industries, different dynamics. So, and one thing that I do, just for one thing, is that I do participate in the diversity and inclusion groups within the company, specifically around women's groups, Black professionals, and then also women in technology. And some of these, and also most recently, because I work in IT security, I'm also a member of the Executive Women's Forum, which is a specific group for women in security professions. And so at the last conference that we went to, this was actually one of the topics about women not feeling heard, just in general. When you're in particularly in a male-dominated field like IT security. Generally, I am the only woman in the room, and then layering on top of that, I'm the Black woman. So there's times where I've walked in the room, or people have come in and they're like, I can tell that they're a little caught off guard that I'm Black, because they're meeting me for the first time. But what I find is that, and then to say to Kiana's kind of situation, I'm usually the only person doing my job. So that's how I'm able to be strategic about how I move in corporate America, because I carve that niche for myself. So they have to depend on me. However, it's never good to be in a situation where you're a single point of failure. So that's kind of the converse to that, because then you can get pigeonholed in your job. So, but talking about people not being heard in a room, I generally don't experience that a whole lot. Number one, people get onto me because I'm soft-spoken. Like in person, my voice doesn't carry. I have to make an effort to project my voice. But I do see that in a lot of male-dominated areas, I've seen the dynamic of the woman who's the pit bull in the skirt, who's known for getting the job done. And there's 3 other men in the room, and they are all talking, and they're all familial, and they hang out after work, and she has really good ideas. However, they're not listening. Number one, men tend to tune out women due to the timbre of your voice, due to the frequency and the pitch. That's just scientific. So you have to be, I feel like, and then being Black, I don't like, my friends and I always joke about, being the Black woman and getting passed over and not getting the recognition. A lot of my friends deal with that. However, to combat that, I carve that niche for myself. That's how I do it, to where they're dependent upon me. So I don't experience it as much as some other people who, let's say you're a financial analyst, you may be really good, but there's there are 3 more financial analysts on staff. There's more competition. If I'm Black and I'm it, then I'm it. You have to listen to me. So that's kind of how I maneuver in that space. But I do recognize the fact that women are, looked at us, especially when you're aggressive. It's like either they don't want to be bothered with you, they talk over you, because there's a boys club, and when you get to a certain pay grade, you got to pierce that boys club in order to play. So, and get those leadership roles. And I think that kind of goes into the sponsorship thing that you mentioned a little bit, quote unquote. But so that's just my experience. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. So Kiana, I'm gonna let you want to summarize that Black women lack sponsors?
That's what I'm saying. Like I truly feel that is industry based. And I know I'm going to continue that. I really want to bring up the fact that the whole movement of women, period. It wasn't just back in the day that women, like Black women, couldn't vote. Like women couldn't vote, like no woman. And so when I hear about, and now I'm not pushing away the fact that Black women don't have issues in corporate America. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm talking about the suffrage of women to be able to be in the positions that we are in now has been a woman's issue. And that's just the way I look at it. It has been, and now when it comes to like what Steph was saying, for Black women to really be able, and I think this is women, period, being able to position yourself in a way that they need you, no matter what. And this, when you bring in either technical experience, they will sponsor, like you will get noticed, like, and when you bring in some money for the company, that is when we're talking about dollars. And we're talking about technical skills, which equals dollars. Or, I think that it's that they will really get noticed. I really do. I haven't had specifically an issue in corporate America when it came to like not being heard, not being like recognized by high level executives.
I have a good story though.
Oh, okay.
It just popped into my head and it kind of got under my skin, but it really wasn't it was kind of like a boys club thing, but in a politics sort of thing. I don't think it was necessarily because I was Black. So I do something very specific. I measure security risk. I quantify that stuff for the companies that I work for, which translates into the dollars and cents and things like that, which is one of the hardest things to do, how to actually quantify risk. So then there's other things about risk like reputational damage and things like that. Let's say if you get hacked, trying to figure out how to repair your image, and that all that stuff translates into dollars spent for the company. So I'm doing this job for AIG, which is a big company. I'm doing really well. And so my manager says, hey, this is really awesome. And he's very supportive and very transparent. So he's like, I feel like next year we're going to expand this program, this metrics program that you're doing, our key risk indicator program. And we're going to have 2 roles. So you can move up and your role can be backfilled. And I want you to write the job description for the role that you want and the job description for the backfill role, which was to be my current role. So I did. And the skills were exactly my skill set. So there's a particular piece of software that I use to do data visualization. We have 10 licenses in the company, well, in my group, and I'm the only person using it. So just keep that in mind. Now, here comes a reorg. So that's the famous corporate, the drama, the reorg. Okay. So I've written this job description for myself. However, the job was given to somebody from another department who had not done this job before, nor did not know the software that was specifically listed in the job description. And it was a white man. And when I'm actually friends with him on LinkedIn, and when I logged into LinkedIn, it says, "Oh, congratulate Chris on his new role as blah blah blah." That's the irony in the situation. But
that is ironic.
But it was really annoying because it was like, because you have in the back of your mind as a Black person, you're like, is it because I'm Black, or is it a politics thing? Like, you're always wondering. Or is it because I'm a woman, or they don't think I could lead, or they were bullshitting me because, or is this some type of game I got caught up in? Like, you never know sometimes. And I did find out eventually kind of what happened, but that just to say, I wrote the job description for the role that I was going to move into. I'm answering Tachi's question. She said, "Stephanie, did you create the position?" Technically, yes, I did create the role and job description, function, skills, requirements, and all that kind of stuff. So yes, and did I say I wanted it? Yes, it was specifically asked for me to write it for me. That was in the discussion with my manager, and I applied for it once it was posted. So yes, they clearly knew I wanted it. So yeah.
That's really interesting. So before I get to the sponsorship piece, I do feel like that there are challenges that I feel like I'm hearing echo. There are experiences that are single issue. It means just woman. There are issues that I think that are single issue where it's just Black. And there are issues where I think that you are at the intersection and you can't take off your Blackness or you can't take off your womanness. When you walk in the room, both of them walk in the room with you. And I also know that, let's say, if we use the example of the suffrage movement, there was a split in the suffrage movement about whether or not to include Black women or include Black people. Right. They actually had a big split because of that. And also decided not to support the men's suffrage movement. And one of the things about the men's is when the Black liberation movement came, that gave just Black men, the right to vote. So Black women still wasn't able to vote. And then in 1920, when women got to vote, that really actually did just give white women. The only thing that made it possible for us is that we were both Black and we were both women, but we weren't looked at directly. And I just wanted to say that there are things that are probably single issue things, and then there are things I feel like that are intersectional issues that we can't remove from when we go in there. One of the things that the article talks about is Black women lacking sponsorship. And it's interesting because I actually saw some of this come up when I did some research on mentoring relationships. And this kind of speaks to one of the things that Kiana brought up about industry-based. Because for the Black women that I interviewed that were in the STEM fields, they needed and had white males advocating for them who understood the politics. Like, they couldn't get into the old boys club, but Brian was in the old boys club, or Jeff was, and they was cool with Jeff. And I think for STEM and some for medical fields, I think that there are some industries wherein sponsorships are very, very important and crucial in navigating. Have you guys had any experiences where you've had somebody kind of just advocate for you, for whether it's because you're Black or you're a woman or because they like you or what have you, that like they were just able to get in a place and sit at a table that you weren't able to, and knowing them and having that relationship with them?
Oh, definitely.
Did that.
Definitely. In my current role, that's definitely how it happened. So the additional irony of me not getting that job is kind of what funneled this current role that I'm in. So our senior vice president, who I was there, so there was one layer between he and I. So my manager reported to this guy who happened to be named Brian, actually. And Brian, through this reorg, resigned, and he's very well liked. And I thought, oh, when I saw that email come through that he resigned, my heart sank. So I immediately friended him on LinkedIn. By that time, I had been moved to another group, and my manager was horrible. She hated me. It was just terrible. So when he resigned, I thought, okay, if he's getting out of here, I better get my shit together and get out of here. because this is bad. And so about maybe a month after he resigned, he emails me. He says, "Oh, I'm at this company and I'm going to have this role, and I would like for you to come and work for me and do it over here," out of the blue. So that's kind of how, and in that process of him getting to understand my work, because there's still one level of management between he and I had people advocating for me, people going to him and saying, "Oh, she's awesome. She's doing this. Oh, she's doing that." There were people there by my side that I would either consider a mentor or somebody who was completely transparent about the level of work that I was doing that was above and beyond my current pay grade. And so I appreciate him for recognizing that. And when I started to realize that I had pierced the boys club, was that his, you know how people have their lieutenants, so like these VPs and stuff, they have their lieutenants that come back and bring information back to them. One of his lieutenants would actually bring me information and tell me about what was going on in the department. So I'm like, okay, well, I must be in the in crowd now because they trust me with info, so I can't screw this up. So anyway, that's how I got to my current role, which is doing a lot more. It's less stressful than that job would have been anyway. And I'm not involved in a reorg, and my commute is shorter. So things worked out. But he did really advocate for me. He wrote a very long recommendation, and the HR department called me the next day, and the immediate question was, "How much do you want to get paid?" Which, like, what is your salary requirement? Because I don't want to even talk to you. Like, I don't, like, he said, they were like, he wrote a very strong recommendation. What is the salary that you're looking for? If we can meet that, we can have some conversations.
Yes. Okay.
And then I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Because after a certain point, you just want to talk about salary first. Like, what is this paying? Because I don't have time.
No, that's good. I love that.
So,
Kiana,
anyway,
you
that's my sponsorship.
You nodded your head too, and then I want to hear from you, Shelby, as well. Kiana, have you had an experience with somebody advocating for you, or somebody got you indoors that you weren't maybe not have been able to get in?
I'm just shaking my head. Like, I understand like the scenario, not necessarily getting in. It's like where I was, you had to have a clearance. Okay, so once you had your clearance, you were pretty much in. But I have, like, the supervisor that I had during the time, he definitely advocated for me. I mean, to the point where in 6 months, I was able to get a raise, $15,000 raise at that. And that was the time I didn't even have a degree. So that was very huge for me. But when you're talking about getting in, he advocated for me, put me in. I don't know if you ever heard of Who's Who's. I don't even know Who's Who's. Yeah, he sent me to Who's Who's, and I was part of Who's Who's during that time. And I'm like, well, wow. I was just very humbled for that he saw me as a professional, as an individual that got things done. So that was major for me. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Shelby? Uh-oh, I can't hear you, Shelby. No, can't hear you. If you just said, "Can you hear me now?" I can't.
I can read lips though.
I see your thumb real good though. I'll tell you 2 things that I just got, or actually 3 things that I just got so far from you guys that I feel like are so valuable to share with other Black women in corporate America. One of the things I got from you, Stephanie, is about participation in diversity groups, how that could be supportive. Whether it's a women's group or a group based on race or based on culture, like how that could be supportive. And I think that there was a really good point too that you brought up, Kiana, in terms of how it can be different based on the industry. Because it probably, I'm imagining, I have no idea, but I'm imagining that it's probably not the same in some industries. Let's say, I don't know. I mean, education wouldn't be corporate America. But just if we're just talking about jobs in general, I just don't know if women are treated the same as teachers as they are in terms of working in the STEM fields or being engineers or business or what have you. So I really appreciate that. One of the things that the study says that I was just like, I don't know if this is all the way true, and I don't know if it's this generation that does that. But when it says that Black women are likely to put their heads down, the full thing says Black women are likely to put their heads down and make no noise, believing that hard work alone will pay off. That can exacerbate Black women's lack of sponsorship and support. In fact, only about 5% of managerial and professional positions are held by African American women. But I'm not sure, like again, like Tashi said, what Black women, what do you think about that? Do you feel like, and I'm thinking that this is, I could see this based on age in terms of putting your head down. But I don't see it that tough with the millennials. What has been y'all's experience? Kiana, like,
I can talk to that a little bit. I mean, okay, so there's a dynamic there. So it's not that straightforward, because okay, it's a hard line to toe, because number one, you don't want to be the coon, and you don't want to be the person that got your job because you kissed ass. Like you want to be able to prove your worth. But at the same time, being able to network and make those connections is not just intrinsic to people. That's a skill. And it's a soft skill that a lot of people don't know. I can go and do spreadsheets. I can write programs. I can, write some queries. I can do all that. But making those connections and getting those mentoring relationships and the networking and, knowing who to hang out with and talk at the water cooler with and all those things is not that easy. And I think as Black people, we're always taught, okay, go in, don't create drama, don't gossip, do your work, do twice as much as the other people, when blue-eyed blonde hair boy is doing 50% less, but he knows how to talk to people in certain situations because he's comfortable with his peers. Those are not my peers. Those are his peers.
Okay.
And that's just kind of the way I see it. And I've had to learn how to do it because I'm naturally introverted anyway. And so coming into situations where now I'm leading a program, it's a lot of meetings and talking and not a lot of doing. It's farming out things to do to people, for people to do, not necessarily the doing. It's being able to convince people to buy into whatever it is that you're selling and getting money for people to sponsor this program that you're doing because, these are the benefits of it. Convincing people that, whatever it is that you're selling is the right thing. So that's the skill, figuring out how to talk and network and not just doing the work. It's a balance.
Okay. I'm going to go over to the chat real quick. Then I want to hear from you, Kiana, on what's your take on that. Joel said, put their heads down. That's a symbolic statement. Quirk said, Rasheem, true on the heads down approach. Tachi said, here's the thing. We tend to be overly humble. I do see some overly humble, but I feel like I see it more with the older generation. Shelby says, we're humble because we don't want to be too aggressive. Quirk says, don't want to mix with the BS. Tachi says, white men and white women will toot their own horns in a minute. We are taught that humility is a virtue. We should always practice sometime to our own detriment. Joel then said, but wait, not all women of color are aggressive. I think that's a stereotype based upon what is thought of women of color. One of the things with what Joel just said, and I feel like we touched upon it a little bit, Kiana, when we were doing Diary of a Happy Black Woman. It's sometimes maybe because we don't want to be perceived as aggressive.
Right.
And I remember seeing a study, and this wasn't based on race at all. This was just gender, where it gave these two sets of people, men and women, a particular character, and they described the character as ambitious. And for the male, ambitious ranked really high with males and females, and for others, the woman being ambitious was seen as a negative thing. So I wonder how much of that might play into people kind of putting their head down and like, I don't want to make no waves. I don't want to be the angry Black woman. I don't want to push too hard. Sort of.
Exactly.
Do also a quick room shout out. Hey, Doug, Kiana, Quirk Place, so Steph, Shelby, Tachi, Joel, Widget is Small, I think, and Pat. Thank you all so much for being here. Kiana, what's your take on that, on the put your heads down thing?
That's what I said when I read, like, you know how when I read this article, just like, I don't know. I don't see it too much nowadays. Millennials, they operate differently, and I agree with you. And Steph, I think Steph made really a really great point, that it is like it's a thin line. There's so many. It's politics when it comes to corporate, and I think the politics is in every office is different. And I think that some places you have that freedom. Like I said, I have not personally experienced a situation where I wasn't able to be myself. Even when I was working in the bank, I had a supervisor where I would question him. And then he sat me down and was like, why do you question me? Everything that I do, you question. Why? I was like, look, I'm trying to understand your process, your thinking, and we're here to make this better. Okay. So I'm coming to you, asking you the questions so I can understand and then look at areas where we can really improve. And once I sat down and had that conversation with him, I wasn't afraid to have that conversation. He's like, okay, I get you. I got you. So it's still being aggressive, but respectful, not being afraid of those stereotypes, and just being myself. And I've seen plenty of Black women that were able to do the same thing. Especially in the banking industry. Absolutely.
I wish that one of the things that you said too, Kiana, I really do wish, now that I'm thinking about it even more, that they would have broken this up, because they do talk about how, women are not a monolithic group. But I do wish it probably would have been more impactful, more thoughtful, more critical, really, if they would have broke it down by industry. I do believe that. Steph, you were about to say something before I move to the next thing?
And I just want that made me think of an experience I had with an employee. I was managing 7 people, mostly women, in my last role as a project manager, and they were all different backgrounds. And one particular person, she was seen as aggressive, even characterized as ghetto, because she would question a lot, and she would drive the point. So what I saw was critical thinking skills and someone who needed a mentor. And so I approached her that way, and I got a fabulous response in saying, I feel like you're really smart. I can see the wheels turning. When we have a meeting, I can see it, and then you're questioning. And so some people are so caught up in the title of being a manager, right, and then someone questioning them as an assault on their position, instead of thinking, okay, she's bringing in diversity of thought because her experiences are different from mine. And so not only had I found, when I really talked to her one-on-one, I found out she had won awards because she had exposed some things in internal audit processes that were incorrect because she kept asking. And so and that was one of the reasons why I don't regret leaving that role, but I feel bad leaving her behind. And I was like, if you need to talk, find me on LinkedIn. Here's my number. I can coach you, because I'm like, you're way smarter than, don't let them put you in a box. And so that's the thing about towing the line, is that they quickly will put you in a box if you don't meet that standard. So you have to kind of figure out how to get what you want without them casting you aside as somebody that's too difficult to work with. Does that make sense?
That's the thing. I love what you said. You about to say something, Kiana?
Oh no, I just agree with her. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love what you said about that mentorship piece. And one of the things that is very true in academia, and it's probably true everywhere, is that language is currency. And I can express something, and I've seen other women express something, and because they like the words that I choose to express it with, or the way that I articulate my point, they'll receive it from me, but won't receive it from her. And not only will they not receive it from her, they'll ghettoize her point, or say that because she's saying it passionately, that it's an invalid point. So and that's something that is not in books necessarily. That's something that would come with mentorship, like, and especially when it comes to things like politics or diplomacy. Rhetoric and language is currency, and I don't think that we always get that too. Like, people will shut you down and not listen to you because you are not using language that they know, that they like, or you're not expressing it in terms that they, you know what I mean, that they use. So you're ghetto or you're stupid. You know what I mean? So, and you don't get that from the work handbook. You only get that from when you have a sister in the office who's gonna pull you aside. Listen, I know that what they're saying is bullshit. We here.
I see you.
Right, I see you, sister. Yeah, so that's good. So here's another thing that I found interesting. I haven't had this in my experience, but this is something that the article points out, or that the report pointed out. Black women are more likely than their white female counterparts to aspire to be a leader. This particular report says that it notes that Black women are 2.8 times as likely as white women to aspire to a powerful position with a prestigious title. 40% of Black women have clear long-term goals compared to 32% of white women. What do y'all, has anybody had any experience with that, towards that or against that?
I can see it. I can see how it happens. I can't say that that's my personal experience. But so just two things. So working in different corporations and seeing where the Black people work, in what departments, and in what job grades they work in, is very telling about the culture of that company, not necessarily the Black people in general. It says something about the types of Black people that they hire. So I'll say that when I work for JCPenney, they're very big on having a college degree. They're very particular. Most of the Black people that I saw were in hourly positions in lower level roles. Most of management was white. So I think sometimes being in an environment and all you see is white people in management, it starts to sink into your subconscious that is not something that I can aspire to, because look at what's around me, and maybe not even thinking about it in a way that is conscious. It's what you see. It's just like watching TV and seeing white images of beauty, and then you start to aspire to that lighter and brighter image of beauty, versus in areas where I've worked where you see it mixed up, where there's Black people in management, there's women, it's more diverse. You know, you can say, look at that sister, she's doing it. She's a senior project manager. I wonder how she got to do that. And you can go and talk to her and say, I want to be mentored by you because I think you're awesome. You know, that's the difference, I think, that I see sometimes. And so last year I had an intern. She's super smart, computer science major, and she's interested in certain things. And so I was trying to teach her some of those soft skills, because I knew she had the technical skills, but once she entered corporate America, I was trying to mentor her on how to navigate and kind of look for things that you want to do and align yourself with people that are doing things that you want to do, how to do that. Those are skills. So that's kind of back to the soft skills that people don't necessarily teach you. And then also I'll say that my current manager asked me, he's like, well, I want you to, this is the first manager I've ever had ask me to do this. And I've been in corporate America since I was 24 and I'm old now. He said, I want you to come up with a plan. I want to know where you want to be this year, in the next 12 months, when the next 24 months, and 3 to 5 years out. And what is that dream role that you would want to have? And find me a similar job description for that dream role. It really caused me to think and plan. Like, I have an idea of what I want to do, but I hadn't put it on paper in a way to where I could articulate it for that person who wants to sponsor me to figure out a practical way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if he knows where I want to go, he can figure out things to do to help me along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I think one of the things too that came up for me as I was reading this is that, so the whole statement of how Black women are more likely to aspire to a leadership position, coupled with the earlier statement of Black women tend to put their heads down. Like, I need that broken down and explain to me how those two fit in the same paradigm. Like, how does that fit into the same thing? Like, I would need a more critical analysis of exactly what that would look like. Did you have something to say, Kiana, before I move to the next thing?
Not really. When I read this one, it goes back to, and I'm glad that you went in a little bit more in depth when it came to the suffrage movement. When I thought about the suffrage movement there, meaning like women started out, we didn't have our rights. And then when I read this part, it made me think of Black women playing catch up. So you're at when what you explain is exactly right. And so because of the catch up, it's more so aspiring to do more, to push for those leadership roles because of the privilege. So once we did get rights, this is how, because I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't explain it thoroughly when I said the suffrage movement, but you're absolutely right. I thought of it more so to separate. So when white women were getting a little bit more privileges, and so it's more so playing that catch-up role. That's what when I read that, aspiring for leadership positions, that's what I thought of.
No, that's a good thing to bring into it, because I wasn't thinking along those lines. But when you say that, that makes perfect sense to me.
I also think about it in terms of education. So, when my mom sat down for career counseling, her career counselor told her, "Oh, well, you did well in typing. I think you should be a secretary." And my grandmother had a master's degree in English and was teaching special ed. And my mom came home and told my grandmother that, and she was like, "Okay, that's cool, but you're going to college. You're going right around the corner to this historically Black institution,
right? And
you're going to get a degree, and you're going to do something else. You're going to be a teacher, social worker, typical Black people careers in 1973. But you was going to college," and she was like, so I think sometimes, and I think there's low expectations for Black children, thus setting the standard to not want to and aspire to achieve. There's some low expectations sometimes that, those kinds of things are kind of put into their head that this is all you can do. You can be a rapper, a ball player. If you don't do that, you got to go work for FedEx. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's more to life than that. And if I can reflect on my grandmother, my mother, and I have those images, but some people don't. Some people, they're the first person to graduate high school, or they're the first person to graduate from college.
Right.
So like you say, playing catch up. and leveling that playing field where, Shelly with the blue eyes, her mom is an attorney, a partner in a law firm.
Mm.
Exactly. That catch up. They've had, you think about coming from money.
Yeah.
Wealth, not they have wealth. Generational wealth.
Yes.
Yes, it's different.
Oh, that is such a good point. That is such a good point. I mean, because it makes a difference. Like if you are starting out at the beginning of the race, and then I'm smooth. Like I don't have to try twice as hard. You know what I mean? I don't have to.
My mama can pick up the phone and make some calls for me.
Exactly.
Even though I got a 2.0, my mommy can do that for me.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic point that you made. And I feel like some of what you brought up, Stephanie, reminds me of the Black Educators episode, where some of the Black educators were talking about some studies that people had found where white teachers have lower expectations of Black students than Black teachers do.
Yeah.
And the role that the teacher's expectations play in the child's development and attainment and all of those things. I think that's particularly interesting. It reminded me of that when you mentioned the thing about your grandmother. Power to So the next 2 points that the report makes is women are not a monolithic group. I think we are kind of saying this throughout the thing, that Black and white women contend with very different workplace challenges. I think some are the same, but the ones that are based in gender. Initiatives that effectively identify and retain top talent must consider the unique challenges Black women face and the leadership aspirations they offer. And another point was companies benefit. Now, so here's the interesting thing. It said companies benefit from rewarding Black women's leadership aspirations. And I wanted to know more about, if they do benefit, why isn't it being done more? Or is it being done more and I'm just not hearing about it?
I mean, I'll be honest, when it comes to statistics and like where are they getting this information, I understand I have just, oh man. And this article it's just interesting. I think that, I don't know. It's just like this article is rough for me. It's rough for me. It really is. When it comes to companies benefit from rewarding Black leadership, how did you even measure that?
Yeah, right.
How?
Right.
Benefit in what manner? Reputationally or financially?
Right. See, that's the question that I have. How are they benefiting? And if they are actually benefiting, then why aren't more doing it? Now, don't get me wrong. I think diversity and inclusion benefits businesses. I do, because you have a diversity of ideas, you're more creative and that sort of thing. But I don't think that a lot of, especially if you're a big corporation, I don't think you necessarily want diversity of ideas. I think what you really want is representation of race. So have all of these representations, but all think the same. And I think that that's a lot of times what corporations end up going for. And they might benefit from diversity because whatever kickback they get from the government or whatever it appears or what have you. Now, I personally feel like, corporations would or do, I could see that happening. I just want to know how it's showing up for them. And if that is, and if it's, all of those ways that it is showing up from the ones who are, tell the other people, like, get the word out. Get the word out. So, reports are reports, and, you can find one report that say one thing, you can find another report that say something else. And we all know that that's the case.
I'm just going to get a job making up studies because it seems to be very...
And see, that's the thing. That is the thing why that's the thing about being a critical thinker too. Because some people will just get one thing and that's it. And they ain't trying to read nothing else. They ain't trying to do nothing else. That is just what they're sticking to. But, and then also, I think another thing about being critical is you could say, oh, I agree with this right here, but this right here, like, I don't have any experience with that. I don't know what you're talking about. And I don't even know how you came to XYZ conclusion. Quirk's Place says they want diverse ethnic groups that think the same. That's not diversity. Right. I agree. I think that people,
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I would say that when you're working in a company, that, I mean, like if we talked about that, it's a certain culture there,
Mm-hmm.
and they look for people that fit within the culture.
Right.
So I'll just talk about working for Nordstrom. So it's a very high-paced, very competitive sort of company. And you cannot come to work looking crazy. It's a fashion company. They sell clothes. You have to fit within the guidelines of what it's unspoken. But how you dress on the interview really dictates to whether or not you'll get the job. So they look for very quirky people, people that are outgoing, very stylish sort of people. That's the culture. But it's not, but my experience is that they're not looking for robots. Mm-hmm. I've never worked anywhere where people were looking for a Stepford type robotic mentality. Mm-hmm. Do they want you to fit in with the people or within that department? Yes. But I think that we actually, in my position, I actually would look for people to bring different ideas because I get tired of coming up with all the ideas. Like, I get tired of, I'm tired. I need somebody to bring something else to the table. You know, and I feel like, especially within IT, which is a particular industry, kind of like, and especially in information security, which is very narrow, they look for people that are highly qualified, no matter what you can do, like no matter what you look like. However, they need people that are problem solvers. And to be a problem solver, you're going to have to bring different opinions and thoughts to the table to solve problems, because you can't, it's not always the same. So I would say to a certain degree, they look for you to fit into the culture personality wise, but not always based on race. It's not always based on what you look like.
Right.
And I think it's more of a personality issue.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a place can have racial diversity, and everybody can still fit into the culture, and it not be particularly different. Not to say that these people aren't brilliant. They could be brilliant people. They could be fantastic, very intelligent people.
Yeah,
I believe that.
I could see how that could happen.
So there's a lot of good things that I got from you guys. I'm so studious. I'm like the ultimate student. I'll be taking notes.
That's awesome.
So one of the things that I hope that everybody takes away from this, and if you don't, then I'm going to share what I got from this whole conversation as well, is about, again, I'm going to reiterate this, participating in diversity groups, how that could be helpful. When I worked for the State Department, I was in a diversity group that was based on women. There was one that was women in executive leadership at State Department. And that was a good group to be a part of. And then I was a part of BIG, which is Blacks in Government. And both of those I found helpful. You know, if for no other reason than they let you know about different things that's going on, what's coming up, you know, and how to navigate some of these spoken things that we're talking about. So I think that that's one thing that Black women in corporate America could definitely take away. Before I go to the other ones, Keon, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to come to you to give us, because you are the happy work week lady, I want you to give us some takeaways and happy corporate America work.
You want me to do that?
Yep. Even if it's one or two. So I'm just letting you know it's coming. I like what you said, Steph. So you mentioned about carving out a niche for yourself. But there's also a danger in that you mentioned in terms of not being the single point of failure. Right. Like, screws up. If you screw up, this whole thing, like, this screws up. Right. And I think that
or because you're the only person doing that job, no one will promote you because they can't backfill it.
Right. Oh, that I have seen happen.
That has happened to me.
That I have seen happen because if I promote you, then who else is going to do this job? I have definitely seen that happen. Pat says, she's talking to Joel. For me, it's rare to find Black people who are competent in their background in workplace. Maybe it's just me in their background. Say more about that, Pat. I'm gonna come back to that. Another thing that I got from this is, I guess it's just like academia in that language is currency. And you know how you say things, and of course mentorship, and how mentorship, or they call it in this article sponsorship, how that's so important, because there's some things that go on in your particular office. You know, different offices have their own culture and quirks and ups and downs. Quirk place, haha. They have their own quirks. And sometimes you might know, like, listen, don't talk to Dan until he had 3 cups of coffee, because whatever you ask him, he's gonna say no. And that's not something that's written necessarily in the handbook. But if I go to work with Kiana, I'm gonna let her know, listen, don't go talk to Dan until he had his 3rd cup of coffee, because whatever he says is going to be no. Or know that when you sign up to go to this meeting, we're going to have a meeting about the meeting, and then a subcommittee to meet about the meeting that we're going to have. Listen, it goes down in the workplace.
I know.
Know that you got to document everything with Sarah, because Sarah loses papers. Or don't take it personal when Tasha send you an email and she CC everybody in the office. She does that to all of us. So just like these little things that people do, it would be nice to have someone to say, don't spaz out, because I do believe that there are times where people are just, you know, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say butts. And they're not necessarily racist or against you because you're a Black woman. They're just butts. And you don't know that they're a butt. So you need somebody to say, listen, this is how he act when this goes down. And yes, I do.
Yeah, I had that experience on Thursday. There's this guy that I have this meeting at 8 a.m. and I don't do 8 a.m. meetings for one. But we have to accommodate people in London and Hong Kong and in Singapore. So it has to be at 8 a.m. So there's a negative Nancy. And I knew it from the jump. The first meeting we ever had, I already knew he was a complainer. So I had taken some unstructured data and turned it into structured data and put it into and normalized it, as they say, so that it would be in a usable format. It took me like 3 days to do this because they had all gathered this information in different ways over time. So I'm just coming in like trying to, you know, compile this list, because we now have a new director and he used to be the deputy director of the FBI. He ain't playing. Like, I got to get this stuff together and send it up the food chain for him. So that was on the agenda for the staff meeting, and we get to talking, and I already knew you know, the person that gets on the meeting, you're like, this could be a 15-minute meeting, except he's gonna get on his soapbox and it's gonna be a 30-minute or an hour meeting when it really should have been 15 to 20 minutes. Like, he's that person. So he gets to talking, and I'm going through my methodology and how I organize the data, what really needs to be worked on, what needs to be fixed, and kind of what, you know, my thought process was. And I pulled the drop down so they could kind of see what some of the choices were in the fields that they needed to update. And he starts going in on one of the things. And, well, how did you assign this? And what calculation did you do? And and this. He was like going in on me. Now, mind you, I'm just collating the data that I was given, and he knows that. And my manager is there, and so my manager is basically like trying to tell him that she's just organizing the data that she's been given. Now, here comes the diversity thing. They understand each other better because they're both British. I'm a Southern Black girl just trying to do my job and keep my head down, so to speak. But I already knew this one dude is a negative Nancy, the guy in London. But my manager's British, but he's here. So he's been in Houston. So he kind of understands me. And, you know, we've gotten to talk or whatever. So I'm just like, you know, it just went on and on and on. And I felt like I had been if somebody was just listening to that call, you would think he was shooting the messenger. But I already had him pegged, so I didn't take it personal. So those are some of the things that you have to be aware of when you're listening and paying attention to that currency that you're talking about, that language currency and how people speak, and knowing when to take it personal and when to not take it personal. But my manager actually called him after that call and was like, look, I don't know what's going on. So he was just frustrated because he didn't like the process overall. And it seemed like he was taking it out on me. And then when he called me, so my manager tells him, well, he's like, well, give him, tell Stephanie that I didn't mean it that way, blah, blah, blah. She's like, well, she's an experienced lady. She's worked at major corporations before. I'm sure she didn't take it personal. But if you feel like you need to apologize for her, call her. And so he called, and I'm like, no, I didn't take it personal. I understand. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell him that, because I never let him see me sweat. But anyway, I understand what you're saying. So that was actually that's my Thursday, the thorn in my side, that 8 a.m. meeting on Thursday, and I know he's gonna complain.
Hopefully about watching this replay on YouTube.
I hope so.
Go ahead, Kiana. Give us some happy work corporate week.
I don't even know where to begin with that. Because I am the type of individual that I will keep it straight. But there's, like you said, Steph is so true. It's so important. Your words, how you say it, and what you say. And I don't bite my tongue, but I do say it in a way that is professional. And but I am here in a position to make things better. Okay. And so I have to say one thing that I agree. Steph says, don't take things personal. Are you talking about specifically about, is it okay? Are you talking about specifically about just this chat in general?
Well, just anything that, I think one of the last things that I just got from Steph too is just don't take things personally. What helps you during the week when you're talking to your clients, what is it that you have what are some of the things that you tell them to help them through their work week?
Oh, I got that all day. The biggest thing that I know my clients have issue with is confidence. And it kind of ties into what I was saying. If you're confident in knowing the abilities that you have and what you can offer a company and how you can make things better, it comes down to revenue. I can make you more money if we do X, Y, Z. That doesn't always work. I get it. But really play your position in that way. Don't take things personal, like Steph is saying, but have that confidence behind those skills. It's so, so important. Really find ways to really use your best skill set each and every day.
I think one of the reasons why that's so big in terms of confidence, because depending upon how up you are in corporate America or the place that you work, how prestigious it is, you can start to have the imposter syndrome. And that could really, really impact how you navigate. So thank you for that. We have about 15 more minutes, but before this thing shuts down on us, and it will shut down on us, I want you guys to let everyone know how, thank you, Shelby, let everyone know how they can get swift with you. So how they could connect on Snapchat, your website, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. So I'm going to let Kiana go first.
What? You can find me everything Happy Work Week on Twitter at Happy Work Week, on Facebook, Happy Work Week, happyworkweek.com. everything. Happy work week. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can find me at Steph on Twitter. You can also find me at the Hers, Mine, and Yours group on Facebook, which is Rasheem and I Show, here on Fire Talk Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. And I believe our next topic will be long distance relationships. Our last topic was online dating, and it was a funny one. We had so much fun.
Online dating, that was funny. Yes. I think when we have the show on long distance relationships, I think that's going to be a hoot.
I think I have a lot to say about that because I've been in several.
That's going to be a hoot. Zan, I hope you show up for that one too. Of course, you guys can always find me at s.rasheem.com. S.rasheem on Twitter, S.rasheem on Instagram, S.rasheem on Snapchat. And you can find this show on YouTube. You could type in Counter Narrative, or you could type in the actual title of this show, which is, this episode is Black Women in Corporate America. So until next time, peace it out. Wait, we got to dance out to something. Hold on, y'all. Let me find some. Oh, I know exactly. See, the only thing about YouTube, though, is it starts off with these dang on commercials.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to listen to no commercial. I just want to get straight to the dancing. So, and we're going to start out with the typical, what I like to call it, the typical Black girl dance. And then we're going to everybody freestyle. If you don't know what the typical Black girl dance, don't worry. You about to learn.
Oh, gosh. Well, I thank everyone for joining us. The comments were amazing.
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
The engagement was... Oh my God. Dad?
Dab on them.
Good night, y'all.